explosive in time.
France, 1907. Louis and Jacques Breguet, young engineers from a watchmaking dynasty, team with Professor Charles Richet, a physiologist with aviation fever. They build a quad rotor, an open steel frame, a pilot seat, and 4 arms carrying 4 8-meter rotors. The rotorcraft headache appears instantly. Spin one rotor and torque spins you in the opposite direction. Their workaround is symmetry. 2 rotor sets turn clockwise, 2 counterclockwise. The torque cancels, at least on paper. At the center sits an Antoinette water-cooled V8 engine, roughly 45 horsepower, asked to feed all 4 rotors through a distribution system that had to be light, stiff, and not suicidal. It lifts a pilot, briefly and not freely. Men steady it from the corners. 1907 didn't end with Breguet and Richet. French bicycle maker Paul Cornu is often credited with an untethered manned hop in a twin rotor machine, reportedly about a foot off the ground for roughly 20 seconds. 1922. The U.S. Army Air Service funds Georges de Bothezat, a Russian-born engineer who fled revolution, to build a quad rotor at McCook Field. The result, the Jerome de Bothezat Flying Octopus, is about 65 feet across with 4 massive 6-bladed rotors. One engine drives everything, a 180 horsepower Larone at first, replaced by a 220 horsepower Bentley. It can hover, but forward flight is fickle, reportedly needing a favorable wind. De Bothezat tries to civilize it with variable pitch blades, control wheels, pedals, and add-ons for stability. The cockpit starts to feel like a small bureaucracy. Over 100 flights follow. In 1924, the Army cancels the project. Lift, though, was no longer the mystery. Control and workload were. In 1936. In Germany, Professor Heinrich Focke and engineer Gerd Ockelies simplify the problem by halving the rotor count, much in the spirit of Paul Cornu's craft some 30 years prior. The Focke Wulf Fw 61, later also labeled FA61, uses a single 160 horsepower 7-cylinder radial engine to drive 2 counter-rotating rotors on outriggers through gears and shafts. Torque cancels itself. Cyclic pitch makes it steerable. More important than firsts is repetition. The machine can do the same thing twice, on purpose. In February 1938, Hanna Reich, gliding champion test pilot and an eager public face of German aviation, flies it inside Berlin's Deutschlandhalle day after day under a roof. The helicopter is now controllable enough to be boring in public. 1939. Igor Sikorsky, Kiev-born, famous first for Russia's giant multi-engine airplanes, then for American flying boats, returns to a problem he tried as a young man: vertical lift. His VS-300 flies tethered on September 14, 1939, then untethered in May 1940. The leap is architectural. 1 main rotor for lift and control, and a vertical plane tail rotor for anti-torque and yaw. Collective and cyclic propeller pitch get fused into a coherent pilot control interface via the swash plate. The helicopter becomes something you can fly with intent, not merely balance with heroism. The single rotor plus tail rotor layout becomes the modern default, and the launching pad for mass-produced machines. Sometimes technology folds back on itself. In 1989, Keyence, a gyrosensor company in Osaka, sold the Gyrosaucer E170 for hobby use, a quad-rotor toy with 4 propellers, 4 motors, and onboard gyros to keep the wobble within reason. In 1999, the Draganflyer, explicitly touting stability augmentation by way of micro-piezo gyros, pushed their quad toward hobbyists and early UAV work. The 2000s didn't didn't change quad geometry, it changed the electronics. Tiny, inexpensive inertial sensors and tight feedback loops let the controller constantly trim motor speeds. Tiny RPM differences computed hundreds of times per second. Two rotors spin one way, two the other. Torque cancels. Yaw, pitch, and roll become arithmetic, not linkages. By the late 2000s, hobbyists had the recipe. In 2010, Parrot's AR.Drone helped make the ready-to-fly consumer quad a thing you could buy, crash, and buy again. The Vogt Sikorsky VS-300, commonly regarded as the first modern high-utility helicopter, is closer in time to the first powered manned vertical takeoff and landing, albeit tethered by the Breguet Richet Gyroplane, than we are at the making of this video, 2026, to the release of the Keyence E-170, regarded as the first commercial quad-rotor drone, by about 4 years.